God bring anything to mind?
I want Mark to share on the traumatic,
Okay.
because you've got stories, plural, all right, on traumatic things. And maybe I'll share with Christian, I don't know. But I was thinking about you on the traumatic end of it, because you have really powerful stories and that physical things that have happened to you. Not just, I mean, it leads to emotional stuff, but it's triggered with something physical that happens.
Wow, gosh. Yeah. And I really hadn't thought much about the result of traumatic things, and there's so much related to my own personal life, my family, and and right now I'm actually processing
the clumsy part.
Yeah,
That's one that stands out to
Yeah.
me, and you sharing your story in the past, that physical things were happening, and then emotional things moved in. The enemy moved in.
Yeah, just at a very early age, got what's the right word? Labeled as clumsy, and that kind of followed me. And I remember every time getting hurt, I was like him. I would curse myself and call myself an idiot and things like that. And then that just happened. And even as I grew into an adult, that kind of followed me in a joking way, And yet it didn't feel true. But if I got injured, it was the first thing that happened. But yet I was an outdoors person. I was doing all kind of things, and I don't really understand. If you take risks, you get hurt sometimes, and that's what I learned later. But the ultimate thing is that in 2001, God had already put this idea of starting this ministry into my heart, and literally a little over a month before I was stepping into that full time, as I fell from a height, swinging on a rope across the river, and I landed on my head, and it wasn't a good situation. It was over Labor Day, and my first reaction when I turned over was to curse myself, and the same old stuff. You effing
In like 2 feet of water, right?
Yeah. Well, when you
add that to the story. When you land on your head in the river, 6 feet of water, 10 feet of water, 2
Well, I landed on rocks.
Oh, you're on the rocks,
Yeah, I
literally.
landed on
I thought
rocks
you were in shallow
and
water.
about this much water, and
Okay.
and it opened my head up, and I didn't know how bad it was, but I know I was hurt. But anyway, everything that flowed in that was, you stupid idiot, you've just ruined yourself to be able to do what God's called you to do, and all this. Well, it wasn't. This is before we went to boot camp, and I actually went to the first boot camp with a
right after we met. This happened.
Right, and I was still.
I think that's a coincidence.
No, I was still wearing a neck brace and had all kind of stuff going on. But anyway, it was that led to realizing that that was a wound. It was attacked specifically against my identity and my calling. And God later on in the healing process. And it wasn't, it was just God coming to me. It was actually I'm not sure if it was I think it was in the Wild Heart Workbook. It may have been in one of the other. Is it God?
Waking the Dead? Man.
Yeah, maybe Waking the Dead. Is that God came in and said, took me back to that, because it was about vows and how you curse yourself. And I realized that had been following me. I've been doing it all my life, and it always caused such an anger reaction at myself. Just this vile anger. And it still slips in, guys. Unfortunately.
I rock in that circle.
But God came and said, that's not what's true about you. What's true about you is that you're dangerous, that you're a risk taker.
Yeah.
And risk takers You know, people that, you know, that go out are usually the ones that get injured and get hurt. And that was just so powerful and such a healing, and it felt so true. I mean, I knew it was true, you know, and it brought such clarity. And I went to everybody in my family and said, okay, you can't call me clumsy anymore. That's just not true about me. It
That's
is
so
not
good.
true.
That's so good, Mark.
So-
That is so good.
What,
Had the courage to address your family. I love that part. I don't remember that part. I mean, that you actually went back and said, hey, I'm not clumsy.
And nobody's
Quit
ever
saying
used
that.
it. Nobody's
Quit
ever
saying
said
that.
that. They would say, you know how you are. If I go on a trip.
That is good.
Yeah.
That is good.
And I went to him and said, that's not true. That's not.
what Barry mentioned and Mark alluded to, there's a process, for lack of better words, but you know, we get wounded in life. You can't live without
Yeah.
getting one. You can do it yourself, other people do it, you live in a sinful world, I mean, it's gonna happen. It's not whether it's gonna happen, it's when it happens, then, you know, Satan will come in with a lie. And the lie for you was,
You're a clumsy idiot.
you're a clumsy idiot. Which means, you know, you just can't do certain things, you just, you know, and you just, you know, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you choose to believe it and make a vow.
Yeah.
Say, so therefore, because I am a clumsy idiot, whatever that vow might be. So what was your vow?
Well, it was, you know, I would not say it stopped me from doing things, but everybody else around me, it was, you know, would hold me back. You can't go lead this group in the Grand Canyon.
That's well said. Yeah.
You can't go do this. You can't go, you know, and so I knew, and when I was in the middle of it, I didn't feel, you know, like the truth, but as soon as something would happen, as soon as I would get hurt, it would be right there. And so, in part of the battle to go into an adventure-based ministry, it was there. Okay?
Isn't it interesting though, side comment, how that you were known as being clumsy, that God's path for you was to put you in an adventure-based ministry?
Yeah.
How that works, yeah.
But, so you believe the vow, and then really, then you respond in that way, and so really the way you responded was to curse yourself.
Over and over and over again.
What does that do for you?
Well, it makes you doubt. It holds you back. I can't take these risks. I can't, you know, I'm not, I never felt clumsy, but I always felt, you know, should I be, you know.
Doing certain things? Or,
You know,
Well, we live out of our identity,
Yeah.
because what you're talking about is an assault on your identity. Go back to the wilderness. If you are the Son of God, when Satan was talking to Jesus in the wilderness, he went after his identity first,
Yeah.
and then you live out of your identity. You'll never become more than what you see yourself becoming. I really believe that's honest fact. You're holding God back with your less than perfect identity of who you are through Christ. See, that's the deal. And anything that's an assault on your identity is going to hold you back. You're going to be, you're not take a full swing, as John likes to say. You're going to choke up and defensively, you know, take a partial swing rather than really let it out, take a full, try to clock on, you know. So, because we live out of that identity, and that's Satan will attack your identity. Did it to Jesus, so why do we think we're going to be exempt? You know?
Seems
And-
like it,
Yeah.
you rejected the strength that God gave you. Like you said, God gave you, like you were adventurous and a risk taker.
Yeah.
And that what did you say? The
lie, vow.
the vow you made, you're rejecting what God has in you. That's a good thing.
Right.
Well, you're not just rejecting it, you're hating it.
Right. You hated it, right? Yeah.
You're literally
It's good, Mark.
hating it. I mean, you know, the rage I'd have against myself, I can't even express.
And then, to begin to address that and have healing, you've got to recognize what you're doing, the wound,
Mhm. Well, I was fortunate in that God, in that instant, in that case, when God brought that to my mind, He didn't just bring that to my mind, He brought almost instantaneous healing and a new name. That was one of those situations where I didn't have, now, the habit of cursing myself still remains, the flesh. So to die to my, to die to that, because I still, that's still a habit.
It's weird how it works, because you had people telling you that you were clumsy,
Yeah.
you shouldn't be doing this and this and this and this. And in my case, not to go into it real deep, but in my case, it wasn't anybody telling me what I can't do. They always told me what I could do, what I could be. But it was the devil and myself that took me down. It wasn't anybody. My mom always told me that I was a great kid and I could do anything I wanted to do and blah, blah, blah. But I didn't listen to her because I didn't have no self-esteem and I didn't have no drive. So with that and the devil, for years and years and years, I just did that. I just kept taking myself down and allowed alcohol and drugs and all that to take over, until I realized one day that there is a life out there. And that's when I started my journey to the other side, to the good side, to who I knew I could be. And so it was different being told by other people that you're a failure, you're clumsy, but to tell yourself that's real extreme.
See, that's a good example. Poor self-image, low self-esteem, however you want to label it. Good place to work backwards from. How come? It wasn't because your mom was, see, I just say, we share the same story. My mom, she's a godly lady, man, never did anything but affirm me. But all these events that happened, things that took my life, coaches, they spoke something different than what my mom did. It's like, well, Mom, that's your job. I know you think I'm wonderful, but that's your job. You have to. The rest of the world doesn't think that.
All my coaches always told me the same thing that my mom did. You got the talent to go.
But something was working against your self-image, though.
Yeah.
I mean, the devil was using something.
Yeah.
See, that's what I'm saying about working backwards. Okay, God, show me these things. And maybe you've been into this a long time too. I know you have, because you've been hanging out with us for a long time. But that's a good example of what I'm talking about. Sometimes working backwards. Okay, God, show me where this is coming from. Or uncontrolled anger. Why are you so angry? Okay, let's work backwards. And it'll lead back to self-hatred. What Mark just said a minute ago spoke to me, and worth my trip up here for the weekend, about my self-hatred against this part of myself that I hate. That's what I've got to deal with. Okay. But that's a good example.
But the self-hatred I have is within myself.
Of what I'm talking
Because
about.
like I said, I was always
But
told
there's a
that-
source of that. There's a
Yeah.
source, though, of you failing to believe that.
Yeah.
There's a reason that we grew up like we did when we had people telling us otherwise. And but it's these other events, the things that.
I mean, I had injuries. I had physical injuries in motorcycle accident and stuff like that, but nothing that derailed me to the point of my own insecurities
Yeah.
in myself, other than physical or mental,
Yeah.
emotional. So.
And see, that's another good term too. It doesn't derail us. We just stuff it down and we don't go like we could. And that's what Mark's contention is. He wasn't ministering like he could have. Wasn't he totally gave up on adventure ministries? He just wasn't doing it full swing. I mean, that's great. I just listened to John last night, and he used that term, take a full swing, rather than choke up and defense. You're 2 strikes. What do? You choke down and you just try to make contact. And that's what, if you're limping through life, that's what you're going to do. You're not going to take a full swing at your ministry, or at your job, or at your wife, or at your marriage. You're not going to take a full swing. You're going to choke up and hit defensively. Great image, even if you're not a baseball player. You understand what that means is choke down, take a short swing so you make contact rather than take a chance on missing with a full swing. Okay? So that's good, Steve. That's right. That speaks to me as well, because I share exactly that. in my
No,
story.
I was just thinking, and I was reminded of getting you talk about healing, I forgot my suitcase, all you guys know, they're in my clothes, you know, and, years back, I mean, it's been a while, because I think that's brought me through it. You know, so what do? You condemn yourself. Well, that's stupid, you know? And I mean, what idiot does that, you know, kind of thing, and, you know, so it kind of reminded me of that, and I thought, well, how did I deal with it today? When it happened, I'm like, well, somehow God get me through this. I don't know. And the first thing after I wake up from my rest was I think I came and told Steve, guess what I did? And, you know, and so, hey, you know, I'm marking some socks, this from Ireland, and you know, so, and yeah, anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I look back and I go, yeah, it's not that it doesn't happen, but you want, you know, I don't in any way I want to say, you know, whatever, but I can just say in this situation where I've seen, you know, say 20, 30 years ago, I would have dealt with it. And now, you know, it still bothered me, but I recognize, you know what, Tim, if you don't deal with this right, you're going to, you know, get really frustrated with yourself, and you'll share that with everybody else. And that's the thing, is you don't really keep it to yourself. It's like you get angry at yourself, really, it starts impacting other people, and people might remark on it or whatever. So I just say that God's credit, and but to say that stuff still happens. But I think the other thing I think that I feel like that spoke to me about is that when you bring it into the light, just by telling somebody, then all of a sudden a lot of the power of it begins to go, and your brothers can help you, can encourage you, can say, hey, that's a lie, you're listening to that. No, that's not true, you know, and then you have to choose to believe the truth.
And a lot of people, I see it not so much in everybody, but in myself, when I went through the tragedies I did with my parents and the way they died. Mm-hmm. And everybody always told me how good God was. And but it took a long time for me to believe in that. I mean, it took me until I was 40-something years old to believe that they did not die the way they did because he did that to them. Mm-hmm. And that's just life. Everybody gets in wrecks. Tragic things happen, and there's just no, it's just life. So to really learn more about who he is, and because back then I didn't believe in him, and everybody told me that I should. Everybody told me how good he was, but that's the fight that I had for a lot of years. And now the fight is, I'm fighting the other way now, but that's...
Lobbing up softball for you, aren't you? Who's doing warfare?
Yeah, we're going to jump into that next, but I thought we
Steve's lobbing up softballs for
just a few minutes, and because one of the things that it's our desire, and we're here to hear from God personally, and so we thought we'd take a few minutes and just talk for about what does it mean to hear from God. Did you have something on?
We all walk through tragedy like you guys are talking about. I can think of 3 different instances where the devil tried to kill me. Mm-hmm. Personally tried to kill me. Mm-hmm. And miraculous pulled out of the situation. Losing our son like you, this gentleman here, our grandkids. God uses that to draw us in. And I've grown through that daily, but it still hurts. Yeah. lost is always going to be. But I bank everything on the reality of Galatians 2:20, which is, I've been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, Christ lives in me. And that life I now live in this body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me, but he gave his life for me.
God does speak.
Well, he told me to make sure that I make the time to be here
Okay.
this weekend. Forget about work,
Great example.
forget about everything
Great
else.
example.
Just be here.
You don't have time to not be there. God's in charge of our time. Too big of a hurry to pray, that's a mistake that I make. Being too big of a hurry to not pray needs to be my attitude. Because that's when I need, it's good, very good. Tim, I can't let this go by, but when you're trying to hear the voice of God, you got to understand it's the voice of an enemy. And so you got to learn to separate those two things. Because that's what I'm thinking. Everybody told me that God loved me, but did they explain to you that there's a devil that hates you and wants all the opposite things that God wants for you in your life? See? No, they don't say that. And so then you have these events, you have some traumatic events, and you're hearing all this stuff, and you're like, God, why are you doing this to me? You don't know that the devil's just in there twisting that knife
And not even,
because you're unaware
not even
of
when I
that.
went to Sunday school or when I went to church with my folks, did you hear that?
No.
It was all God's grace and
Yeah, and so it didn't make sense, did it?
Of course you're
It did not make sense because God's holding out on me, or He doesn't love me, or I'm not good enough, or the other places that you go when you think you're hearing from God and you're actually hearing from the
it
devil.
still doesn't make sense today.
So,
But you're more aware he's out there.
but there's, there are certain things that we do to hear from God. I want us to get quiet, and that's why we do this. Give you a chance to get quiet, us a chance to get quiet. I told you last night, I'm having trouble slowing down. I mean, I am. And my life's not that crazy. It's just the devil. My life really isn't that crazy. I just allow it to be,
Well, it's for me, not bringing my suitcase, it's like it's talking about slowing down. We had that conversation earlier.
Yeah.
It brought down, so it's good. It's a good weekend for me. And then all of a sudden, chill down.
Well, in your
Yeah,
case, the
that's
devil may make you want to smell, but the Lord will make you roses.
Thank you.
That's a card, isn't it?
T-shirt.
The enemy's voice is powerful. I mean, one of the ways that the enemy speaks is anytime you feel condemnation.
That's good, Tim. That's
As
exactly
a
right.
child of God, He clearly says, and if you struggle with that in any way, just, whether it's Romans 5, therefore now, no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. So anytime you hear a voice of condemnation, you know for sure that cannot be God. And I can't say it more than
And when that happens to me, I said, Satan, go,
Yeah.
go.
Well,
But you got to recognize it. See, that's the deal. Because if you're trying to hear from God and don't understand, there's other places. All your thoughts are not your thoughts. That's why John explains it in Wild at Heart, which spoke very good to me. That all your thoughts are not your thoughts. The devil's giving you thoughts. God's giving you thoughts. And you've got to sort them out.
Well, I mean, for the years that I've been talking to men about hearing God and and hearing God's voice, it's always been, well, I heard Him when I was saved, but I really haven't heard Him much since. But just thinking about hearing God's voice and listening is the key, and then understanding how to listen. Okay, breaking. Because what I've come to understand is that we've not been taught to listen. And there's a danger in listening because there is another voice. And we've always primarily his voice gets through very, very good. And when we open ourselves to really start listening for God's voice, Satan, all right, kind of comes along, and that's where you have to start practicing, the disciplines of spiritual warfare. And okay, I'm going to reject those thoughts, in recognizing that all the things that are not of God, because you do. I mean, it comes with the package. We're in a fallen world, but John teaches, like in walking with God, hearing His voice, the more you practice listening, the more you practice responding to God's voice, really the better you get it. My dad likes to say that God is always broadcasting. The problem is that we've never learned to tune in. Once we tune in and make a practice of tuning in, He's always, every minute, every second of every day, He wants to speak to us. He never gets tired of, showing us things, telling us things, of the simplest things, and so you said yesterday, what is so vital about getting out for guys out into the wilderness is that we're made in His image. It's a part of our Father's heart that we share on a deeply intimate level. And so it's really easy for guys to get out, and just feel God's presence and His pleasure.